How about the implications of an atheist president, perhaps? We're seeing some of the, shall we say, or at least we have seen some of the tensions that can arise with religious diversity where it concerns the presidency. But what are your opinions on perhaps how the American public would react, or even how you in particular would react to a candidate that was atheist? And I feel perhaps you've already addressed this some, in the sense that can we allow ourselves to be swayed by simply the religion of a candidate, and should candidates and those in power seek to codify, shall we say, their religious beliefs upon others?
So I think there are a couple of ways. There are two ways I can think right off the bat to answer this. One is very easy. Do I think in the near future that an atheist has the chance of being elected president of the United States? So I can give a quick answer. Do you want a quick answer? That would be no. So, but then of course, there's a more complex answer, of course. We could say that we're moving towards a place where, for the first time, for example, we have a ticket without a Protestant on it. It's new, very new. 12 years ago, we had a ticket with an Orthodox Jewish person on it. That was new as well. We have a ticket with an African American. We're moving. Are we anywhere close to the possibility of someone saying openly, I do not believe in God, but I'm running? Okay, a couple of things, it seems to me, many things I suspect will stand in the way. Here's one. Right now, we are approaching the season again where there will be the language of culture wars that will enter into our lexicon. And it almost always surrounds whether or not one should say, Happy Christmas or Happy Holidays. If we can't come to grips with those two categories, and we spend year after year after year arguing, and we do, with a great deal of airtime, and people who are vilified for choosing, let's say, Happy Holidays over Merry Christmas, as if somehow they have totally discounted what it means to be a Christian. We can't even get to the point where that's acceptable. I don't think we're anywhere close. Okay? Not to speak of someone who may be a Hindu or someone who may be a Muslim. So I think there's one might argue that maybe a way is being paved. How far that horizon is, however, is anyone's guess. That's the longer answer to no.
To follow up on that some, would you like to go into a bit more depth about your opinion on, I hadn't actually thought of it before you mentioned it, but the sort of debate that does go on annually, the sort of dialogue that does go on annually over Merry Christmas versus Happy Holidays.
And the different news channels that will actually run that debate as the war on Christmas.
Yeah. I don't know. In fact, I think I can say this categorically. I don't know of a time where someone has ever said to me, Happy Holidays, where I have been halted in my tracks thinking, what are you? Anti-Christmas? It's because I don't think that's what, I don't think that lies behind it. I think it becomes, if it were not given as much airtime and press, and given the kind of principal importance that I do not personally believe it deserves, we would not be having this conversation. I know there are certain public figures who have sort of taken this on as a project every single year, and or have taken on companies that might say we would rather not have let's say, the Salvation Army in front of our store, but we would be given and subscribing for the life of me. I just do not see it, if you will.
Is that a systemic problem or situation within, shall we say, our social diction? Almost the identification or the selection of certain really trivial issues and blowing them way out of proportion and making a big deal out of something that really perhaps should not be. Would you say that it has broader implications?
I think what you said in the first instance is where I would go with this. I guess I'd like to believe that the people who elevate this to a place of prominence obviously do not think it is trivial. And so in deference to that, I will say that's very important to them. However, having said that, I think we have a habit of taking something, and what has happened here now is that this issue has been so blown out of reasonable proportion that actually it's accentuated some things that really we do not need as part. It's caused greater divisiveness in our society rather than I think pulling together and healing. Listen, if I'm shopping and someone says to me Merry Christmas, I'm perfectly happy to say Merry Christmas. If someone says to me Happy Holidays, I'm perfectly happy to say Happy Holidays. I think to take that issue and give it the kind of privileged position that it's been given during the season, to me is so utterly ridiculous. Given other things, this is a season when you should be talking about peace. You should be talking about goodwill. You should be talking about community. You should be talking about togetherness. Instead, it injects a kind of a sort of strange, kind of venomous thing that creates more divisiveness. And it's almost as if there are those who set out as sort of vigilantes for this issue, to catch people who would say this, to vilify them. That is the kind of thing that I think. But there's something else. We like to think that we know in the manner in which we have crafted out, let's say, I'm focusing on this issue of Christmas in the United States, that somehow that accurately reflects the manner in which perhaps it originated 2,000 years ago. It could not, of course, be further from the truth. So if we really want to deal with this issue in terms of its core, we should understand that the X that people talk about Xing out in Christmas is the Greek letter chi for Christ, that it has nothing to do with that. No one is taking Christ out of Christmas. That in fact, the manger scenes that we created and the dressing up of Mary to make her look, like a 20-something established, or the shepherds who look remarkably clean, even though socially they were, if we really, really want to do this, what will happen is that commercially it would not sell. So what we have done is, of course, sort of done a kind of revision, and there's an ongoing revision where we have really sharpened what Christmas is to fit who we are. So I think there is something really remarkably disingenuous to talk about, how could we talk about how, well, actually it's really holy days, but how can we talk about holidays when in fact it should be Christmas? My thing is, should we really get to the root of this? Let's talk about what Christmas is about. Let's talk about the origins. But we will not talk about that because it also runs right smack into other things that we hold to be important. And part of that has to do with economy. My point is that, once again, I think it fits a larger picture. We're one component of something that is much larger and, in my estimation, much more important if we really want to talk about it in a sort of an intelligent, systematic way. That would be one thing. But when one single component is plucked out, and I would dare say plucked out of context, and then exaggerated to the point where it becomes a national issue every single year, without any kind of historical and intellectual basis, I think it's silly. I think it is utterly silly, and it takes a great deal of energy and attention. But it is ultimately a really ridiculous thing to be focusing on, and it's remarkably divisive, and it has spawned all kinds, and I believe, interestingly, intelligent responses. One listens to John Stewart, who, by the way, invariably will have something like this on his program. And to listen to that, and many people do, you come to realize that it's become a joke. It is a joke because it's a false dichotomy that is being made here. But it's now been exaggerated to a point where it's taken prominence in all of the discourse surrounding the holidays.
Not just Jon Stewart. Stephen Colbert actually has an annual show called The War on Christmas. And he's done that every year for 6 years now. We're going to try and change gears just a little bit here. One of the other issues that comes up fairly often if you watch the news is prayer in public schools. What do you feel is, I guess, the appropriate way for public schools to handle students who wish to pray in their schools or wish to express their religion in public schools?
And let me broaden this, just the angle, just for a little bit. Our own historic language is church and state. And I think that has worked well in terms of the tension here for a long time. When I talk about this issue in my classes, I speak about religion and state. And part of it is that I think the angle has been widened. Now, if we're talking about prayer, if we're talking about religious expression in the context of the classroom, in the context of school and so on, that is not parochial, that is not private, in the public sphere, I think we at least have to explore, if we're willing to go there, the possibility that I may want, as a Muslim, as a Hindu, as a Buddhist, as a Jew, to somehow also express. Or do we want to say, you are excluded from this equation? I have to admit, actually, I think this would be an interesting debate to have. Do we really want to talk about religious expression within the public sphere, within public schools? Or do we only want to keep it as a one kind of expression? If that's the case, I think it has to continue to be something that is problematic at this point. And I think it's a very kind of slippery slope once again. In part because the moment it seems to me that someone says that, you from some quarters you may get marginalized and ridiculed for not believing in God, or for taking away my freedom. It's not about that. It's about an invitation to how do we think about how we express religion in the classroom. And have we arrived at a point where we're willing to say, okay, I think we want to do this, but we want to do this in a way that it's open to everyone.